I was so excited. I was on my way to my first full-time summer job. It was not going to be a very glamorous job. Now, I had just finished my freshman year at Brooklyn College, and the job would be in the sub basement of the New York Life Insurance Company on 23rd Street in Manhattan. But I'd be working for one of the largest corporations in the world, and I'd be getting a good entree into the business world. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and friends, life presents us with many learning opportunities, but we really have to be careful about the lessons that we take from the rush of events. This will be a cautionary tale, and I hope that you will profit from my mistakes. When I arrived at that third sub-basement, I found myself in a gigantic room filled with huge metal cabinets. As far as the eye could see, each cabinet was filled with drawers, loaded with insurance policies and associated correspondence. Now, the job was simple. You'd get a tray of about 25 or 30 items, and you'd go out, find that policy, and do whatever was necessary. Since the job was very strenuous, it involved a lot of walking, climbing on ladders, and sometimes climbing on shelves. Only young men were doing this job, and the supervisors were only a little bit older. The big boss made occasional visits during the day. I really liked the job. The guys were great. As you can imagine, there was a lot of clowning around, and I was getting some good exercise. As the weeks progressed, I realized that the number of policies that you could process in a day was measured in baseball terms. In other words, 200 was barely adequate, the minimum. 250, average. 300 was a great day. 350, you were an all-star. And 400, unattainable. Being highly competitive, I decided that I would see, well, what's the record? So I asked the supervisor, and he said, 425. I decided, I'm going for the record. But I kept putting it off because I wanted to learn every shelf, every cabinet, every row so I could optimize that run for the roses. Finally, the last week of summer came around, and that Wednesday at 9 o'clock, a deep breath, and I was off to the races. I was like a well-oiled machine. I was running around those aisles, climbing up on shelves and ladders. I observed all the breaks, but by the middle of the afternoon, I was tiring. But I kept at it. And finally, at 5 o'clock, I walk up to the supervisor, and I said, okay, what's my count? And he said, 409. Well, I felt great. I didn't break the record, but it was a wonderful day. The next day came, and I had absolutely no clue as to what was coming. The day was uneventful till about 4 o'clock, when one of the supervisors, a snotty grad student, handed me one policy. Way in the back, with a flimsy excuse as to why it was necessary. I should have been suspicious. But good old naive Richard took the policy, walks all the way to the back. When I rounded that last turn, a hand came up over my mouth. Someone grabbed my arm. I was locked in a vice-like grip. I struggled. I knew what was coming, but I couldn't get free. The guys removed my pants and hid them in a drawer. So there I stood in my skivvies, humiliated. I'm hearing the laughter, and I decided, I'm not just going to stand here. I walked up to the front and sat down. Finally, the big boss, he must have heard of the commotion. He came down, he ordered my pants returned. I put them on, and I got ready to leave. On the way home, I tried to concentrate on my book, but I was disgusted. The next day, one of the guys said to me, "Rich, you sure are a good sport." I said, "Thanks." But there was murder in my heart. If I could have wiped them all out, I would have. I was that hurt and angry. I took a lot of lessons that day, the wrong ones. Like you can't trust people. Like mediocrity will be enforced. That people are so jealous that they will strike out at those that excel. And that it might be very difficult to succeed in a business world with these kind of things happen. I only wish I had known about the 4 agreements then, because I violated the 2 most important ones. I took it personally. I took that depantsing personally. And I made assumptions. One of which was that these guys, the guys who devised the plan, executed it, supported it, were all jealous misfits who couldn't hit 409 if they tried. So what really happened that day? Why did those guys do that? I know now that I don't know. I have no idea. But there's 3 possibilities. One, it had nothing to do with the 409. It was my last week, and this prank was just a parting shot at the newbie. Second was, yeah, maybe they were annoyed because I had been arrogant. I never told anybody what I was going to do because I didn't want them messing with the trays. So they probably saw all that running around as, "Oh, look at Mr. College Boy showing off." A lot of them had only a high school education. This was their permanent job. And the third possibility is reasons unknown. Do we really ever know what motivates other people? The conclusion I draw now from that event is that it was a bunch of guys having some fun at my expense, and I took it personally. What events in your life have you perhaps given the wrong spin, and therefore you sit in chains of your own making? The right lessons from that event are, don't make assumptions. And try to look at events dispassionately. You'll find that life will be much easier that way. Madam Toastman.